I have realized that there was one place where this was listed as 12:15 instead of 12. So um, there may be people who show up at 12:15 as well. So I'm just going to keep an eye on the waiting room in the meantime. And um, hopefully that will all just go smoothly. Okay, so welcome. I'm Mag Sheridan, and I am Mojo mentor, embodiment coach, and meditation teacher. And this class is part of my Boss Move series for entrepreneurs, which is embodied excellence for entrepreneurs. Each time we learn a skill that is about strengthening a quality that you need to run your own business, which, as we all know, is a huge personal development course in and of itself. So I am coming to you today on Gadigal land, and I acknowledge the Gadigal people as the traditional and ongoing custodians of this land and water, and respect to any First Nations people tuning in for this exercise. And welcome to everyone. I am going to glance at some notes over there occasionally if you see me looking that way. Um, the point of today's workshop is to talk about um, closing down as a transition from autumn to winter and how that cycle of the year with the seasonal change can be applied to moments in our business where we need that kind of energy. Um, we're going to do a little bit of talking and then a bit of a practice. And for my demonstration, I'm going to be sitting in a chair and then standing up. So if you want to copy me, you can do that, but it doesn't require sitting and standing if that part's not comfortable for you. So one thing to know about these movement workshops is that it's never meant to be athletic or physically challenging, and definitely not anything that hurts. So for instance, if I said, do this, first of all, everything that I say is invitation if it feels good to you, if you want to do it, etc. Of course, everything by your choice. But also, the point of the exercise is challenging your inside, not challenging, for instance, your shoulder. So if I'm doing this, but that doesn't feel good to your shoulder, don't do it, first of all. And probably I will have already said, if that doesn't feel good to your shoulder, try this or do this with your hand. There's always a way to modify something to make it adaptable to your body. And one thing that I recommend is turning off the self view on Zoom if you have that on right now, because it can be a little bit disorienting to have your own mirror image visible all the time. And I'm going to assume everyone knows everything else about how to use Zoom, but I do welcome questions either in the chat, or you can virtually raise your hand, or you can physically raise your hand if you're on video. All right, so I'm just going to bring up something else over here. So for embodiment work, the idea is to make a mind-body connection. And the essential benefit of that is that your ideas, thoughts, feelings, and everything that's internal can match up with your behaviors out in the world. So that's integrity and keeping your promise to yourself, but it's also behaving authentically. And it's much easier than um, fitting yourself into a mold of someone else. So, uh, sorry, I lost my train of thought while I was getting out my notes, but I'm just going to bring this back to the top of the pile. So, some other analogies for this concept of the cycle. Every process that has a change in it will have a beginning and an action period, and then a finishing stage, and then an end, or maybe going back to the beginning. And so we see this in nature, like the sun going down and up every day is an example, and the moon going around is an example on a bit longer scale. And so the season concept is taking spring to mean starting, summer to mean the action phase, and autumn to mean the finishing phase, and winter for the space in between. I really like this analogy because um, connecting with nature, it's valuable in so many ways, but one of the ways is that nature is on its own timing and it doesn't budge, it doesn't skip steps, and it's just this is how it is going to be. There's nothing you can do about it. And that's great because it encourages or forces me to have more acceptance and patience. So in the case of this cycle of the seasons, right now it's autumn, and so you're not going to get springtime activities in the natural world. Um, an example is if you pass someone in the street, your interaction with them also has that same cycle. You have the moment when your eyes meet and you recognize them, and then you have a brief conversation, and then you say, oh, I need to keep going, and then you part and are away from each other. So in the case of a business application, you're going to have the plan, and then doing the project, executing, and then a wrap up or debriefing or something on the plan, and then a pause before the next. Now, the pattern that I've observed that's really common is a lot of people love starting things and doing things, and the finishing and the pausing are much more difficult for most people. So I'm curious if that is also your pattern, if you notice, like, oh, I'm great at writing an outline for my newsletter, but actually sending the newsletter doesn't happen nearly as often. Or maybe you notice, oh, I get so caught up in analyzing what happened with my last workshop that I never get into the mode of doing the next workshop. I'm just stuck in that autumn and winter phase. This can be determined by your personality, your neurotype, your culture, your habits, your necessities in your personal environment. There's a lot of factors that will affect your pattern in this way. And like most embodiment exercises, the idea is to know yourself better and then to be able to make a different choice. If your work is coaching or something like that, then um, it can be even more important to make sure that you have this autumn and winter part of the cycle, because if you skip autumn, you may be leaving your client in an emotionally unsettled state and you haven't brought them back. You may leave them wondering, I'm not quite sure what I learned because they didn't get that summary statement. Um, you may be leaving them not sure where they are in their sequence or how many sessions are left or what their homework is, etc. It's important to do the functions of autumn, which include closing the thing down and summarizing and preparing for the rest period. So if I use the word spring, what I mean is the beginning of the cycle, etc. It's a metaphor. And so in particular, I want to make sure to say that I'm not trying to say, oh, you should only start a new project when it's spring outside. Instead, what I'm saying is bring that spring energy along with you when you're getting ready to start a new project. Okay, so hopefully that's all making good sense, and let me know your questions as we go along. I'm going to talk about the movement that I'll be doing. I'll just make sure I might tilt this down a little bit. So I'm literally going to go from standing to sitting and back again. That's the extent of it. Um, this is actually like a physio exercise I'm doing right now because of my knee. So I'll probably be adding support of my hands just to make sure my balance is good. And you can add whatever supports make it easy for you as well. Uh, so the exercise is doing an action and observing ourselves doing that action. And the action is sitting and standing. And we're going to look at it through this model of a cycle. So I'm going to have sitting in the chair as my end position and beginning position. So for a winter kind of energy, I might be sitting back and I'm letting my back rest against the back of the chair. My spine is curved in. And this position makes it easier for me to slow down a little bit and maybe bring my heart rate down, change something about how I'm sitting to make it just comfy cozy so that I can rest here. So observe this for yourself for a moment. And then I'm going to invite you to come forward. So now my back is not against the back of the chair. My skeleton is still supporting my body, but there's a bit more muscle involvement just to bring me forward, keep me upright. And by virtue of being upright, I'm a little bit more alert. And I'm also just slightly leaning forward, ready for action, ready to focus on something or do something. So this is forward and this is back. And in playing with this difference, I would invite you to take a couple breaths in each position. It's not about like, okay, here for 2 seconds, here for 2 seconds. That part doesn't give your body enough time to react to feeling this bored or not, and may not give you enough time to observe what those reactions are. So taking a couple breaths, sitting upright, being, do I feel more action oriented sitting this way or sitting this way? So for me, this is a good winter position for me, resting. And then when I'm coming into spring, I'm going to scoot forward a little bit on the chair. I'm upright. I might want to breathe in or breathe out. I might have my eyes and my head go up, eyes up, up. And now I'm standing. This is the summer of this part of the exercise. Just standing. Notice if this makes you feel impatient or empowered or any other feeling. And then I'm going to consider going back to the chair. There's a moment of preparation. There might be a glance back, reach back, and down. And then autumn, the standing bit is finished. And then I can rest back again, all the way finished and into the rest period. Let's do it again. Getting ready. This function might include planning, it might include cleaning up, it might include cleaning yourself up, putting on a uniform, might include writing an outline. And then springing into motion. And the motion in this case might be writing an email to that client that you've been putting off, sending that newsletter, giving that workshop or that session, and then closing that down and saying, okay, here's what we've covered. Here's what was important about what we just did. Here's what I want you to remember. And I'm going back into my seat now, finishing. I'm ready to let this container be closed. And now this time as you come back, pondering some other aspects of the winter feeling. It's not just about rest. It can also be about celebrating what you've done. So think about if, as you were sinking back into your chair, you were also saying, yeah, I did send a newsletter 4 times this year so far. And that's less than I wanted, but that's good effort. Good effort. I did make an effort. I did make it happen 4 times. Okay. I like to add the physical celebrating when I'm celebrating. So this resting kind of celebrating is a little bit different. Personally, I would do a little bit of celebrating in the autumn. Here's everything we've learned. And I'm so proud of you all for learning it. And then closing. And then a little celebration for myself that's more private. Well done. Well done. As you can see in that example, it's not the case that each season or each seasonal energy corresponds to one function. There are multiple functions that are covered in each of those quadrants. So, for instance, in autumn, at the beginning of autumn, the Boss Moves workshop, we talked about deciding when to close out a program you've been offering. So that's an embodied decision-making process where we aim for a quicker, easier decision-making process that's going to give us a clear signal. This is the right way to go. This is the aligned choice for me. So that was focusing on deciding to end an offer. And that's a very autumnal kind of energy. Um, Similarly, letting go is an autumnal energy, but that's a very different thing than closing down. Letting go might be things that you very much don't like and don't want, and closing down might be about how what a fantastic project that was, and now it's complete. Um, and letting go doesn't necessarily have to be negative either, I suppose. But just to draw out the metaphor that there are different qualities within each part of the cycle. And so that's why the cycle of the year is not just a list of 12 things, but quite a lot longer list. So I'm going to stand up and shake it off a little bit so I can do a somatic reset and get ready for another round of doing a similar thing. I'm going to add picking up an object. So I'm going to start out in the chair. I'm going to plan and prepare, and then I'm going to stand. I'm going to get something from the dresser there, and then I'm going to set it down and come back to my chair. Okay, so it's just a slightly longer cycle. Again, with a super simple, basic function so that you don't have to waste any mental energy on wondering what to do. You can just let your observing side chime in and say, oh, yeah, that part makes me feel really impatient, or that part feels really yummy and I just want to stay there. Okay, ready? So I'm feeling springy. I'm starting to prepare. And as I prep, the sun comes out, perfectly timed. All right, I'm standing. And now I'm going over to do my function. I'm going to pick up this chime and then set it down, come back, and I'm down in the chair. And then I'm all the way in the chair. So that was a typical pattern for me. I'm gonna just perch on the edge of the chair for 2 seconds, and then I'm gonna jump up and do the next thing. That's why this work is so useful. And through this work, I've become something of an advocate for rest, which is why I really enjoy teaching people about how to allow a little bit more rest into their lives. It can be challenging. So here's an example of resting fully and maybe kind of I'm sitting back, but I'm not really resting. I'm sitting not all the way back. So being aware of that, I can say, oh, okay, I wasn't resting before. Now I'm gonna make an attempt to rest more, let myself rest. And by doing that, of course, I get more energy to go into the next cycle. And here I am preparing, leaning forward, getting ready, feeling that momentum start to build. And I'm coming up and I'm going over. Lovely. And then I'm coming back to my chair and rest. One of the things that's fun about these exercises is that a very simple motion experiment like this and sometimes bring up some really deep feelings. And so I encourage you to get in touch with me to talk about whatever has occurred for you in this hour. Um, it can be kind of shocking sometimes when a very simple change in the position of our bodies or a gesture with our hands or something like that, it can actually have a profound effect on what's going on up here. And that's why we do it, of course, but the impact can be quite surprising. So I like to offer a little bit of a warning that even though we're doing really simple things, you may be discovering something profound about yourself. So approaching it with 100% compassion always. And I do encourage you to email me afterwards and we can have a chat. All right, let me check on my notes and see what we have not done yet. So when we have this motion, as I've said, the parts that are challenging often are the finishing, completing, and the resting. So I want to work on just that part of the cycle a little bit more. And in particular, tuning into this difference between my spine coming forward and my spine being back against the chair. So if you are into anatomy or you've looked at a skeleton, you might notice that this part of the back is often in, and then it comes out at your shoulder blades and at your bottom. Yeah. So you have this is called the lordosis. And when you have that gap there, you can just fit your hand in. And then when you scoot back and your hand is resting against the chair, but nothing above that, That's kind of as far back as you can be with an upright spine. Now, from this position, if I try to make my low back touch the chair, that's reversing that lordosis, right? Flattening out against the thing that's behind me. My pelvis tips under a bit, and the spine above also curves in a bit. And understanding that level of motion in your spine is really important for your physical movement, of course. But it's also really fundamental for a change in this internal system activating or resting. So letting your spine come forward and be more upright and more extended in anatomical terms. That means that you are in action mode, not necessarily fight or flight, but sympathetic, as in I am ready to do functions with my limbs. I'm ready to be in motion, going somewhere, and getting something done. And when you have your spine in the opposite position, then that's like, okay, my limbs are not in action now. And I'm going to let my digestion happen and all of these internal organs get their time and the resting cycle. So when you're making a change in the position of your torso, that's going to be activating these spinal cord reflexes. And if you allow that to happen, you can really let yourself rest much more than you might have been able to before. You're taking advantage of how the nervous system wants to work naturally, and you're encouraging it with your position. So sitting up, action, I'm ready to do a thing and thinking about where I want to go next. And now flattening back. We're about, that was very satisfying. I'm thinking about how well the past thing went and what's going to happen with the next thing. And I'm just letting there be a pause in between. Now, just to reassure you, I don't expect that means there's this huge long pause before you do the next thing. It's not a requirement to change the pace at which you work. It's just taking what might be a second to say, yeah, good job. Not just taking something off like, one more thing off the to-do list, what's next? But like, oh, sweet, I got something done today that I wanted to get done and I'm ready to take it. Here I go. That is going to release the dopamine that will help you move on to the next thing more smoothly and easily. So again, it's not just about a um, philosophical difference, but you can generate a chemical change in your body by taking that minute to say, yes, I did the thing. Good job. Yay, me. It's going to reinforce doing the thing, and it's going to get you on a neurotransmitter train to the next thing. All right, so that's what the Boss Moves program is all about. Doing this embodiment work that will, I like to say, lets you create the mood you want to have. So instead of getting to your desk in the morning and thinking, what am I in the mood to do? You can say, okay, I've committed to today, I'm writing my newsletter. I don't feel like it. How can I feel like it? It's not a magic wand situation, which would be completely fictional, right? It's a case of, can I be 1% more motivated to do it? Can I make this path just slightly smoother for myself? And those 1% changes really add up and multiply up. So this is what exponential growth is all about. by learning how to make myself 1% more motivated or 5% more. And when I get really good at it, then I can get up in the morning and take myself from really depleted to, okay, yeah, I remember why this is important to me. And I have thought of something I can do that's got a smooth path. And I remember my skill set. And all of these things might be things that come back to you mentally. Some people do a journal before working, things like that. But it's also possible to bring those things back with movements, with gestures. So one of the offers that I have right now is about doing um, a bespoke power pose, is what I've kind of been calling it to myself. So a power pose you might have seen is like, or maybe, "Ooh." And this is an idea from Amy Cuddy, and it was someone who made it really well known. But the idea of doing something with your body that feels really powerful to get yourself ready to take a powerful action. And so that is a really powerful system. I love that, except it's generic. And so, what I can do with you is create something in an hour that you can do before you work that's custom to you and makes you feel like whatever you want to feel like when you're getting ready to work. So, some people would say, "Oh, I'm going to be a badass boss today." And other people would be like, "I don't want to be a badass. That sounds terrible." So, that's why it's important to find the right words and the right motion that amplify that feeling you're trying to amplify. So for me, when I am getting ready to work, I have um, kind of a longer sequence that's maybe 15 minutes of some dancing movements that I do and statements to tell myself that go together. And then I also have a 1 minute version of it that builds on the times that I've done the longer version and builds on all those memories in my body and my mind. And then it can bring me back into, okay, I've got my boss energy ready, and here I am in action. Um, so yeah, I would love to work on that with you. Um, the idea of what we worked on today is understanding the cycle of every event and how to improve your performance in that cycle would be one way to phrase it. In today's workshop, we were particularly talking about a quality that goes with this time of year, which is resting and understanding the different things that are part of that winter cycle, which can include celebrating and resting and the beginnings of planning for the next thing. Um, and So I would encourage you also to watch, if you haven't already, to watch the embodiment exercise working on visibility. And this is one of the free replays that I have available. So maybe 40-minute class. And in that case, it's working with the idea of getting ready to go live, which is something that a lot of business owners have as a desire for their business. But it's really difficult to actually make it happen. And that's the kind of scenario where embodiment work is perfect because you have the desire and you're just trying to make your actions meet up with that. So mind body connection is how to get there. All right, I'm going to just come forward to read the chat for a moment. Oh, yeah. And so there's a comment about chronic back pain, and that will definitely affect how you're sitting in the chair, right? And that has been me as well. And what it took me a long time to realize is this emotional connection. So, um, just to use a slightly different example, I have a belly thing also. And when my belly is upset, I want to sit kind of like this and just cradle it. And that is a position of being depressed and being defensive. Physically, being in that position actually makes those emotions easier in my brain. So I've had to learn to really become aware of that, of like, okay, I'm feeling really down right now, but maybe it's because all day yesterday I was just like, in my belly. And so maybe I can sit up and have a heavy pillow on my belly. And that gives a similar support kind of feeling down here without putting my spine in that position that I don't want it to be in. So in the case of back pain, um, you're going to want to go back to that principle I said before of always prioritize your physical comfort. So um, not to do anything uncomfortable, but you'll need to experiment with this angle of your chair. You know, will it be comfortable to have one that's slightly up in the front like this one is? Or sometimes I want one that's just flat and then my back is more naturally in this position, even if I'm all the way back. Things like that are body awareness in a different way, which you probably have tons of. And the problem with chronic pain is that you also have that necessity of turning off that awareness in order to manage the pain. So that's something that I really enjoy working with because for so long I was completely ignoring everything down here intentionally. And it is not a sustainable way to live, unfortunately. And it also cut me off from a lot of sources of fun and pleasure, dancing. So, hypermobility also can be part of a tricky bit in moving our bodies. Mm, yep, in and out of awareness. That's exactly right. And it's such a good point that you bring up because the goal is not to be in full awareness 100% of the time because that would be exhausting. And the ability that our brain has to say, okay, this, I can turn off my awareness of that thing, that's essential. We need that. Otherwise, the feeling of like your clothes on your skin would be a constant feeling. Being able to turn that off means your brain can pay attention to something else. So it's a little bit different with a pain signal, but the same principle applies where your brain will say, okay, I've had this same signal repeated over and over. I'm going to just ignore it for a bit. And that is a benefit, and distracting yourself from your pain is a good thing. Paradoxically, I have also found through this training that paying close attention or having really good awareness of the painful areas can sometimes really help mentally. So, um, yeah, there's a lot of possibilities. I don't have full understanding of how that last bit works, but I have seen it work in myself a few times. So that's kind of an exciting possibility. Mm. And someone says, I have techniques to help me mentally with the chronic pain. Yeah, it definitely requires a lot of techniques because that can otherwise take over 100% of your brain. I know. Um, I'm glad that you enjoyed this movement. My big passion is helping people move their bodies in ways that feel good. And it's not about punishing yourself for what you ate before or trying to be a certain shape or anything. It's just about, oh, this feels good, this feels better, that feels different. And tuning towards that pleasure is really delightful. It's unusual for most people. So that is why I'm so passionate about it. All right, thank you so much for joining me live. And I will also send out the replay, and you can work with this again in your own time in a different space, maybe, or with more privacy. And when you get that email, then you can reply and let me know how you were going. All right. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.